Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Episode. Here, it kind of feels like we speed ran through the month of October because it is the last Thursday of the month, and that means it's time for the MiSTer Monthly News Roundup. And it's been another awesome month for MiSTer FPGA and FPGA gaming in general. So we're going to be talking about quickly all of the different innovations we got this month so you don't miss out on anything. Before you get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But I'd say one of the biggest things on the MiSTer FPGA front this month is the fact that SRG320 updated the Sega Saturn core on Update All. Because over like the last 5 months or so, all of the preview videos I have run on all of the new improvements and fixes that have come to the core have all been on manual install test cores only. That means if you ran Update All, you didn't get them whatsoever. You'd have to manually install them on your MiSTer FPGA's SD card. And every single time I ask in comments, do you manually install or not? I'd say basically 95% plus of people just wait for Update All. But I do like to keep polling the audience, so you tell me down below, do you do test cores or do you just wait for the official version release? And that is why this is absolutely an awesome piece of news for the month of October. That means everyone who has a MiSTer FPGA that just runs Update All, maybe once a month or so, is going to get the most recent version, not only of the Sega Saturn core, but of the Sega Type Video core as well, which is the arcade variant of the Sega Saturn. And if for some reason you haven't updated your MiSTer in October, you have to go and do it today so you can get these new Sega Saturn cores, because even though SRG320 has buttoned this thing up to the point in time where it feels like it could be a final release, there are still fixes coming in, and if you are playing on the old core, maybe from like late spring, early summer, you're going to get a lot of new innovation and improvement overall. And don't forget, we have both the single RAM as well as the dual RAM cores. If you have a single RAM MiSTer FPGA, you're going to get a tiny bit of slowdown in a few 3D fighting games, but you can kind of move over to fast RAM mode to try to alleviate that as well. But if you do have a dual RAM MiSTer, then definitely run the dual RAM core, that way you don't have to worry about it whatsoever. But honestly, it's been so much fun following along with the development of the Sega Saturn core, and now that you can actually just run Update All and get the most recent version that I've been testing on, it's going to be a lot more fun for a lot more Sega fans, so definitely make sure you do that. Now let's stick with SRG320 for a moment, because even though we don't have a test core for the 3DO, at least with the recording of this audio, he did post another preview up on YouTube, and this time basically showing off a lot of the FMV in different games. That is because the way the FMV works needs to be completely buttoned up, and even though we saw in-game gameplay examples of the 3DO in previous videos, including examples of FMV running, there is more than one way to process the FMV footage on a 3DO, so I'm sure SRG320 is trying to innovate and basically get a lot of these things in line in the core before we see a test release. And it really is interesting to see the completely different way that this core is being developed versus something like the Sega Saturn core. We had a Saturn core and it basically did nothing whatsoever, so it is interesting SRG320's decided this time to kind of develop a lot of it in the background before we even have a chance to play it. And even though I do love making some testing videos on the channel, I feel like a 3DO testing series wouldn't do as many views as something like the Sega Saturn. But trust me, there is a lot of fun to be had on the 3DO. Do not read or do not believe what the internet tells you when they say the 3DO sucks and there's no good games. I'm not saying that it is a hidden gem. I'm just saying that this system has dozens upon dozens of absolutely incredible games that you would be very happy to sit down and play. And it's one of those things. I know a lot of people don't own a 3DO, even though I own multiples of them, and the best way it seems like maybe in the future to play might be FPGA, because we do have software emulation for 3DO and it is quite good, but I can't wait to start testing an FPGA core in the future, only against real hardware, but software emulation as well. But honestly, this is definitely shaping up to look good. We've seen a bunch of in-game demos, we've seen a bunch of FMV, so hopefully maybe by the end of the year, there will be some sort of core out there we can test. But in the meantime, SRG320 is showing us that he has FMV video running, it has good audio, it's not clipping around, it's not hitching whatsoever, and that is definitely something that is going to be important, because not every single game uses FMV on the 3DO, but it was a big component of a lot of the titles, so you want to be in a situation where not only does the video look good, but obviously the gameplay matches, and it feels like we're getting pretty close to a test core soon. Now, as far as SuperStation One is concerned, Taki Udon sent in a lot of information for the month of October onto Twitter as well, giving an example of a very close to production model of the SuperStation One from Retro Remake. And honestly, this is definitely shaping up to look amazing, and hopefully in November that people start getting some shipping notifications and I can get a hold of a unit to actually review on the channel, because I get more questions about the SuperStation One than any other piece of MiSTer FPGA hardware at this point in time. People love seeing the updates, and people love the fact that this thing has been developed out in the open in public, so you gotta get a sense of exactly where Taki Udon and Retro Remake are in the manufacturing process. We've seen things like potential N64 cart loading, definitely not fast enough to be something you'd want to use, but a potential, and we've seen a bunch of the development PCBs, both populated as well as blank of all of their components, and that to me at least is really fun, because people not only want to play something like this, they love hearing about how it's made, how it's iterated on, and how this hardware actually comes to market from being just a concept written on the back of a napkin or a piece of paper. Sure, there's a lot of steps in between, but basically every single step here has been gone over on Twitter by Taki, showing photos and videos of everything that is happening, and that I definitely think is a really good ethos when it comes to developing hardware, especially from a smaller company. Give people a look at what's going on under the hood, tell them where you are in the process, and if you do hit a delay or a snag, give them exactly a reason why, because SuperStation One is missing its actual targeted ship date, and that's because they had to spin up another validation board because there were a few issues that they needed to fix. They even posted up some videos of populating a PCB by hand, at least the components that the factory was out of. This is kind of, for lack of a better term, and as I always love to say, how the sausage gets made. So hopefully in the month of November, the news will say that SuperStation One is shipping. Some people have them in their hands, and there might even be a review video up on my YouTube channel. But it's one of those things I'm happy to wait to make sure it gets done right, and it seems like we're hitting the home stretch here as well. Now, on the NES side of things, in the month of September, I talked about the fact of accuracy on an FPGA core, why sometimes that doesn't quote-unquote matter if it fails a few synthetic tests that don't have any bearing in any of the gameplay, visuals, or audio you're going to see. That being said, people went in and made sure that the NES core now passes every single test that there is out there, giving it that quote-unquote 100% accurate moniker. And again, it's one of those things, talking about accuracy when it comes to FPGA is a very interesting concept. Yes, everyone wants 100% accuracy, and you can't see me right now, but I am doing air quotes with my fingers, but sometimes when you fail a test, it's something that has absolutely no bearing to any of the gameplay whatsoever. And interestingly enough, my Sharp Twin Famicom only passes 126 tests, and there's other official NES models out there that will pass even less, and that doesn't mean that they're any less accurate, and that doesn't mean that they won't play all the games you want to play, both fan games, ROM hacks, as well as the retail library. It just means that these tests were written for a very specific set of versions of the NES hardware, and others might not actually adhere and be able to pass all 129 tests. But that is kind of the thing. On paper, the MiSTer FPGA core is more accurate than my Sharp Twin Famicom, but if I wanted to play real hardware and sat down with my Twin Famicom, I would never think it was doing anything incorrectly. That being said, people went in and, like I said, made sure that every single test here, including all of the unofficial instruction sets and things that you're not on paper allowed to do with the NES, passed 100%. So it is a massive milestone. It kind of shows the dedication to the project that people are willing to undertake just to make sure that all of these tests will pass, even if in the end it doesn't matter if you play the old core where only 125 tests passed or the new one where 128 passed. You're going to get the same gameplay experience in the end. Let's talk about the Amiga CD32 core for a minute. That's because a new Amiga Vision configuration pack is out there, which is going to be one-click play for basically every single Amiga CD32 game that you would possibly want to sit down and play, and even the ones you wouldn't want to go anywhere near. And it's one of those things, the PC core side of things can be more difficult on MiSTer FPGA with the configuration, and even though the Amiga CD32 was an actual home console, it still has all that Amiga PC DNA in it, and it does require some setup to make sure it's running well on the MiSTer FPGA core, things like where the video is and all those other diverse settings. So the Amiga Vision team went in and did an entire pack for this to make sure that every single game that runs on the CD32 will just run on your MiSTer FPGA without you having to touch any of the settings. And that is a huge benefit because not everyone wants to sit down and tinker with something. If you have 45 minutes to play MiSTer FPGA at night before you have to go do something else, and for some reason you want to sit down and play some Amiga CD32, Now you're going to take seconds to get into the game and play it, versus spending 5 to 10 minutes to configure it before you actually get a chance to even enjoy any gameplay. And anything that lowers the barrier time-wise between turning on your MiSTer FPGA and jumping into a game and having fun is something that definitely should be celebrated. So the link to that pack is down below as well if you want to pick it up, and tell me if you've been playing any CD32. I would be curious to see who's out there using this right now and who may use it in the future. But I think the best news from the entirety of the month has got to be the fact that the Philips CDI core can now run Thunder in Paradise. And all jokes aside, yes, I kind of just like making fun of Thunder in Paradise, even if I think it's absolutely an amazing game, just because it is the most delicious flavor of 90 cheese you can possibly imagine. But this was a game that wasn't running in the previous core, and even though it can freeze here and there, this is the best version of Thunder in Paradise available, down to just how good the video quality is compared to any of the other releases. And trust me, this is just absolutely straight up a vibe. It's one of the weirdest games out there. It was based on a TV show that didn't even really become successful, but the gameplay is relatively decent for a light gun game, and honestly, just seeing Hulk Hogan absolutely overact every single scene in that 90s aesthetic just 100% works. I love that the intro kind of feels like basically a Kirkland brand Saved by the Bell intro, and even though the game has more of a quote-unquote serious tone, and you can tell that they actually spent a little bit of money shooting some of these scenes for the game as well, and there are scenes in here that aren't going to have anything to do with the TV show, because it kind of feels like it was shot as its own one-off episode. But again, it's something that wouldn't work on the CDI core before, and even though the CDI isn't a system where you're going to find a lot of hidden gems, it kind of is just indicative of how much fun and how weird the 90s were, and being able to play something like Thunder in Paradise on the CDI core is a 10 out of 10, and that's just down to Slammy improving the CDI digital video cartridge replication on MiSTer FPGA. But that's all the news in the month of October. And if you ever wondered, every single MiSTer core dev has this exact same headset. That is how they develop all the cores. They think about what they want to do, and things just happen. But all jokes aside, Thunder in Paradise is a 15 out of 10, and I'll see you guys next month for the next MiSTer Monthly News Roundup and videos between. Bye-bye.